And we're live.
All right.
Thank you. Oops. Thank you for joining the Hudson 7 Drinking Water Council's monthly meeting. Today is Thursday, August the 26th. My name is Rebecca Martin. I am the Director of Community Partnerships for Riverkeeper and acting coordinator and co-organizer, along with Town of Hyde Park Deputy Supervisor Neil Krupnick, for the Hudson 7's virtual meetings. Our meeting guidelines and abbreviated procedures are available in full on the Hudson 7's meeting page on their website, www.hudson7.org. In attendance tonight, we have the Town of Hyde Park Deputy Supervisor Neil Krupnick. We have the chairman of the Hudson 7 and the Village of Rhinebeck Mayor Gary Bassett. Voting members continuing on. Hudson 7, Town of Poughkeepsie Board Member Bill Carlos. And the Town and City of Poughkeepsie Water Operator and Technical Advisor Randy Altstadt. Great. Non-voting members, Emily Svensson, Technical Advisor, Land Use. Dan Shapley, Riverkeeper.
Hi.
Thank you, Dan. I think that, and we have, from Dutchess County, Brad Barkley. Great, those are voting and non-voting members. Have I missed anyone? Okay, we have a quorum.
Here comes Paul.
And Paul Melmrose, Technical Advisor on Engineering. Great, we have a quorum. So on behalf of the Hudson 7, I now turn the floor over to Chairman Gary Bassett.
Hey, welcome everybody. I hope everybody's staying hydrated. As the heat index today, I think we all should just take time and go jump in the Hudson River. How about that? And, as they enjoy and get out of this heat. But anyways, let's move on. The first order of business is approval of our 7/15/21 meeting minutes. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Neil. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, voting members, please say aye and a show of hands for the video.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so approved. Thank you.
Hi, Shannon.
Aye.
Hi, Shannon. All right. Next order on business is communications, right? So, Rebecca, is there anything we need to add to this?
No, there's nothing we need to add, but I would just highlight that recently we lost former supervisor of the town of Lloyd, Paul Hansett, who was a founding member of the Hudson 7. He passed on July the 17th.
Yes.
Also notable that Don Kiernan, a founding member of the Hudson 7, is retiring this month.
Oh, I think I saw that. Yes. So, do we know who the replacements or their alternates are so that we can send an invite?
Yeah, the new town of Esopus water plant operator is Neil Butler, and we'll get to that later in the agenda.
Okay, very good. Okay. All right, so moving on. I saw Brad here, so accounting update. I think Brad's the only one. We don't have Ulster County today. So
Yeah,
Brad, could you give us an update?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing we probably want to talk about tonight is that John and Dan took the county executive out on the boat the other day, and I don't know what they did to him out there, but he was willing to sponsor and talk to Ulster County and talk about really taking a lead in sponsoring the staff position that we've been talking about for so long, funding those. And he really, as I understood, pushed for a commitment that all of the communities do contribute something. And I know Bill Carlos had put together an idea of what those contributions might look like. And I know he's also already talked to Pat Ryan as well. And Pat was very interested in involving Ulster County. I think the third thing I could say was he was interested in seeing it be more than just Hudson 7 issues, and also including a lot of the different stream issues that we're seeing that might cover the whole counties and not just the Hudson 7 area. My understanding as the staff person, we would definitely rely on Riverkeeper and try and have them really support that person, because to create a position that would just stand on its own is just not going to work and as well, we don't think. So I would be interested in to hear what Bill had to say. I know Gary's short on time tonight, so I would swing it back to you.
Thank you. And I think it'd be just appropriate to mention that we do have on the agenda something that we talked about at our last month, was to form these ad hoc committees to address this. But I would like to hear Bill, since Bill was on the boat as well, so we can then, have that information when we go into our action items. So Bill?
Okay. Captain Lipscomb, thank you. You're muted, but thank you. And number one, thank you to Dan Shapley. The trip on the river came about through Riverkeeper, through Dan, and with the help of John. And I was asked to come because I could be persuasive. And I came. And Marcus was very receptive. When we were going north along where Central Hudson site is, John was able to point out the sheeting that was up, and every once in a while there'd be a bubble of sheen. And then we talked about the cables down the river, and Marcus led the conversation into actually starting to have the Hudson 7 become a force. He spoke about it. His concern is that we also deal with any of the tributaries that come into the river that could affect our water, whether it's the Falk Hill or the Wappingers or the Esopus. That was his point. He also said that the idea of the different agencies involved, each coming up with a certain amount of money, and then he would say that they're going to support us. And he's already talked to the county executive in Ulster, and they're going to support us. So for a boat trip, number one, Marcus saw it with his own eyes and understands the implications of it. And I think it was a great, great trip. And for the Hudson 7, we have been, since we started this, talking about how we're going to do this, how we are going to support this, have the funding to do it. And here's the doorway. So I think when we get to the point of talking about this, we come up with an idea of each one of the communities, based on their size, would be involved. The balance of it would be picked up by the two counties. So I see that as a total win for the Hudson 7. I think it moves us another space up. And while I'm talking about the Hudson 7, I had an idea when we first started talking about doing this Hudson 7. But if you look at your agenda for tonight on the topics that this board, this group are going to deal with, we have come a long way, and you're well past where I thought we would be for this time. So I'm very thrilled with Marcus and with the county executive from Ulster. I think this is the way to go, and I think it's right to use Riverkeeper and deal with it through them. Because this will be a standalone operation. This won't be a county operation. It won't be Dutchess. This won't be Ulster. This will be the Hudson 7. So, and we take another step forward, and I think it's great. Any questions?
Dan?
I'm sorry, if we are going to have more discussion later, I can wait. But but I'll just add really quickly. One, I just want to clarify, Mark Molinaro asked for the boat outing and we tried to get Gary. He was on vacation. So we tried to get Gary and Bill. I just want to be clear. And then also, I think what's great about this is it's a great first draft of how we could fund the Hudson 7. And I hope that we can form the committee to then, consider it, alter it, whatever, figure out how to make use of it. But I think it's great that he was right away ready to ante up. And also that, I lost my other point, I'm sorry. Oh, that we have a timeline, I think, because of the budgeting process. To take advantage of it, we should form that committee and get on it and try and make it a high priority, because I think, striking while the iron's hot and while the budget process is active would be wise if we can.
Gary, can I just second that from Dan, because that is the one thing that we really do need to do. Just to give you an idea, the department budget process started a long time ago, and so we're well into the budget process. And really, if it wasn't for the county executive interjecting, we wouldn't have the opportunity to put it into this year's budget. So time is of the essence, and we really need a scope for the position, because that's the only way the county can legitimately kick in funding. So just to agree with what Dan said, and I know that was your intention as well, Gary.
Yeah, that's correct. So I'll just add to that, and then I want to move on. That in my discussions with the county executive in regard to the organization, our organization, and what we need to do to be successful is one of the primary positions is to find a coordinator position, and the primary source of this funding will be used to staff that position. And that the timeline that both Dan and Brad mentioned, the county executive would like to have something back from us by the end of September. So when we get to that on the agenda, think about that as we kind of move forward with we were already thinking well ahead, and we had these already on the agenda of action items that we needed to do. So I think we're all in sync. We just need to act quickly, as Dan said, while the iron is hot. Okay, I'm going to move on, because we'll have plenty of discussions. We have time for discussion. I heard earlier that there was no public comment this evening. Is that still the same?
Correct.
All right. I'm going to go right into our feature presentation for this evening. Is really Grant Jang on our drinking water source protection program process. So I'd like to welcome him to our committee and to become Grant to be, give us some guidance on what we need to do and how we need to get started for this project. It's been a long time in coming, so we're glad you're here.
I'm happy to be here, Gary. I do have a presentation prepared for oh, there we go. All right. Let me figure out how to make this not full screen on my end. Perfect. All right. Yeah, so this is the kickoff for the Hudson 7 Drinking Water Source Protection Program, or as we call it, DWSP2, a little bit easier to say. So next slide, please, Rebecca. So the source water protection began in New York back in the late 1880s. That's about when the watershed rules and regulations started getting rolled out across the state. I don't know if any of y'all's municipalities have these on the record, but you go through it, a lot of them are pretty out of date, unfortunately. But in 1996, Congress amended the Safe Drinking Water Act and added the Source Water Assessment Program, or SWAP, and required states to evaluate sources of public drinking water. And we are all, unfortunately, probably aware that these swaps were a bit imperfect of a final product, but still an important concept tool for municipalities and communities. The SWAP efforts from the 2000s was the last state-led source water protection initiative until 2017, when Governor Cuomo signed the Clean Water Infrastructure Act, which allocated $3 million for source water in each of the last three state financial year budgets. So unlike the previous swaps, the DWSB2 program is not led by a single agency. It is a collaborative effort between 4 state agencies. So we have New York State DOH, specifically the Bureau of Water Supply Protection. We have New York State DEC, Water Quality Protection, the Department of State in its watershed program, and Ag and Markets in its Land and Water Division. So shortly after the bill was signed, there was a multidisciplinary stakeholder group that was established to form the vision for the new drinking water source protection program. And this group included members including the American Water Works Association, the Business Council, New York Association of Regional Councils, Association of Towns, Association of County Planning Directors, Association of Counties, and Soil and Water Conservation, as well as Riverkeeper, including Dan Shapley, and New York Rural Water. Next slide, please. So the multidisciplinary group highlights the need to not only update source water assessment, but also the need to push for implementation of source water protection projects, which is taking the next step, something that the old swaps didn't do, unfortunately. So the effort from the early 2000s was a step in the right direction, but it fell short because there was unfortunately no programmatic support for implementation and no engagement on the local level, and so this current iteration of source protection has made community involvement and partnerships its focus, and we believe that that will be the key to the success of this program. Next slide, please. So our strategy for DWSB2 was to have 5 different types of technical assistance providers to assist communities and municipalities free of charge with developing and implementing their own unique individual source protection program plan. And in the case of the Hudson 7, I think that will probably be a joint plan between the 7 municipalities that are relying on the Hudson for its source in this reach. All we've created, the 5 state agencies have created a working draft of to create drinking water DWSB2 plans. And so every single technical assistance provider will be going off of the framework to create the DWSB2 plans. So the 5 assistance providers were our state hired consultants. DEC and DOH have hired 2 consultants, Barton and the Judas and Chazen companies. And they're working with 21 communities. DEC staff will be providing technical assistance as well, and then DOH staff, including myself. In theory, we should have 2 DOH staff in each region to assist communities with developing and implementing plans. At this current time, we are working on hiring a 2nd person for this region. So at this time, you have me, that's going to be me and somebody else. The regional planning boards are also involved. They've received funding through DEC's 604B grant to assist municipalities. Those D604B contracts are 4 years long. And then New York Rural Water Association has been writing source water protection plans for communities across the state for the last 25 years. And he was a key stakeholder in the creation of the current iteration of the DWSB2 plan. And he's incorporating the framework into his own source protection plans as well. Next slide, please. So our draft framework is available on DEC's website, and it also comes with supplemental tools, including data summary templates and a template for the final plan itself. I don't know if anyone's had a chance to take a look at that. It is a pretty lengthy document. I think it's like 160 pages or something. Although the framework itself is fairly short. The rest of the document is dedicated to resources to help municipalities to develop the plan itself. And that includes things like funding sources to apply to and take advantage of, as well as common contaminants that can be found, as well as tools to help with source water delineation and groundwater modeling. So the consultants and the regional planning boards are giving the DEC and DOH DWSB2 team feedback on the processes and resources as well. And at this time, everybody's kicked off the DWSB2 process. Beginning this year, we were a little bit delayed, unfortunately, because of COVID, but we are kicking off. Next slide, please.
I'm sorry, one moment.
No worries. Right, so there are 4 key components to this iteration of source protection. The first, because this time we're focusing more on having a grassroots bottom-up approach to source protection, as opposed to the top-down, state tells you to do something approach. The first part of the plan is the stakeholder group. So, the framework runs through stakeholders that should be involved in the process, and I'm available to help provide insight into that process as well. So, forming the stakeholder group. The second is the source water assessment itself, which involves developing an overview of the water system, preparing a map of your drinking water sources, inventorying potential contaminant sources in the contributing area to your source, and then importantly, the protection and implementation strategies to protect source water moving forwards, and lastly, progression and maintenance. So we'll run through the key components in a little bit more detail. Next slide, please, Rebecca. So first up is a stakeholder group, and then next slide again. So since this program is community driven, we do want to ensure that there is community involvement and buy-in from the community itself, and they will guide the development and implementation of the plan. So the purpose of the stakeholder group is to bring diverse stakeholders together so everyone involved can understand the benefits and impacts of the proposed program, and then to jointly identify a varieties of opportunities and alternatives to bring various resources such as expertise, staffing, and funding to the effort, and then identifying common ground that's related to the improvement of the watershed and or aquifer health. Next slide, please. So once the stakeholder group is in place, the goal is to establish goals and formulate a vision for the plan itself. And this will help align priorities and resources as they develop and as we implement the plan moving forwards. The framework includes examples of visions and goals such as protect public health, improve public confidence in drinking water, protecting against taste and odor issues, as well as reducing treatment costs. And long-term success of source water protection, we found often depends on the acceptance, buy-in, and participation of key stakeholders, and that vision will help to garner support for subsequent phases of the plan itself. Next slide, please. So next is the more technical aspect of the framework and the plan. Component 2.1 is to develop an overview of the water system, and this helps stakeholders get a baseline understanding of the system, or the systems in this case, and can be used to select appropriate methods to delineate drinking water protection areas, as well as identifying or help to focus on protection methods to use, as well as including, and the overview will include basic information about the system, the water quality, and water quantity of the source. And this will also help identify potential contaminants of concern and help prioritize protection efforts. Next slide, please. Next is the mapping, and this is something that I'm available to help with. So protecting a drinking water source protection map may involve revisiting the original map developed in the original SWAP report, and I'm not sure if the Hudson 7 have access to their old SWAP reports. If not, we can talk about this after my presentation. Or creating a new map with updated information. GIS software can be an invaluable tool. ArcGIS is the most common tool out there, but it is also unfortunately expensive. There are free open source GIS alternatives that work just as well as Arc. And I can help with that, and I've experience with those tools, and am available to offer my assistance. And so here we can support you during this part of the planning. DOH is well equipped with mapping software as well as groundwater modeling expertise if needed. The resource kit of the framework provides mapping resources such as conservation easement data or DEC water withdrawal data. And next slide, please. And then so the big thing now is the identification of potential contaminant sources. So here's a list of common potential contaminant sources, and then we'll need to identify all the well, as many as possible, given the size of the Hudson 7, contaminant sources in the protection area. To help with the mapping and the inventorying, the framework includes a list of potential contaminant sources that municipalities may find in their protection area, as well as resources through the state to find where these contaminant sources may be located. Now, the Hudson 7 does have a bit of a trickier situation, and that is drawing off of the Hudson River and not, a groundwater well or a small reservoir. So, this list doesn't include the big projects that have gathered attention, like the Champlain Hudson Express Pipeline or the Central Hudson Dredging Projects, but all of those are things that should be addressed in the plan. And so, yeah, this list of potential contaminant sources is not all encompassing. And so, we encourage you to use your local knowledge throughout the framework to have a unique, individual, and helpful source water protection plan. Next slide, please. So in the framework, each potential contaminant source listed has its own table that includes a brief description of what the contamination source is, what the contaminant or contaminants of concern may be, any core regulatory requirements that the source is subject to, and where to obtain information on the contaminant source and whether or not there's publicly available data for mapping. For example, a buried storage tank, provided it meets the size to be regulated by the state, would have a table complete with the information, including how old the tank is, what the tank is holding, where it is, and the current status of the tank. And so for this portion of the framework, DOH and DEC partnered with other agencies to ensure that we had up-to-date and publicly available information for each potential contaminant source. Next slide, please. And now, the next step, the important step, is the protection and implementation strategies. So using the contaminant sources that were inventoried, your communities will choose which protection and or management methods that are feasible and can be done and they want to use. And so these management methods can be used on their own or in conjunction to protect against existing and future contaminant sources. Next slide, please. The framework includes both regulatory and non-regulatory protection methods, including things such as intermunicipal agreements, which you've already done. Creating an overlay district so that folks can actually see where their source water is coming from and what's contributing to the source water, as well as perhaps who's in what water district, encouraging best management practices within the protection areas, and then doing outreach and education about protecting source water itself. And these are not, protection methods are not specific to each potential contaminant source, although they can be if you so desire. And so roughly the protection methods can be broken down into 3 categories. So land use, monitoring and reporting, as well as outreach and education. Land use is extremely critical, and it makes sense to have this at a municipal level since New York State is a home rule state. So the municipalities have a good deal or a good deal of say on what goes on within their municipal boundaries. And that can be regulatory methods such as comprehensive plans, zoning ordinances, designating critical environmental areas, or intermunicipal agreements, or non-regulatory methods such as land purchases, encouraging the use of BMPs as necessary, best management practices, and build out analyses. Monitoring is also important if possible. Citizen science has been used in a lot of the country and all over the world to great effect. So it's for getting people involved in getting and having an interest in their source water, as well as having the manpower that often a lot of the regulatory and municipalities have, or lack rather. So yeah, expanding monitoring and then designating perhaps someone or someones to keep an eye out on the source water itself. And lastly, outreach and education efforts are always important, and that things like press releases, newsletters, signages, or trainings as necessary. Next slide, please. Each protection method has its own table within their framework, and that includes things such as what the protection method is, when to use it, examples, and where to find additional information. So for an example, a critical environmental area, let's say, but perhaps with more detail, what it is, which is a location in a community that has been identified for unique characteristics, when to use it, future projects so that future projects will consider its impacts on sensitive resources within the area. And then it provides examples as well. And then next slide, please. Each potential contaminant source that was previously identified will also have its own set of management methods broken up into the same categories. And these management methods were created with other DEC divisions and the other agencies for the users of the framework to follow. And they're either a step-by-step process or a list of best management practices to utilize. And again, many of the potential contaminant sources point communities to publicly available layers or the DEC info locator website, which is very helpful to obtain additional information. Next slide, please. And so each identified protection and management method should have a detailed implementation timeline to keep the plan on track and so that there is truly a protection program moving forwards. The framework includes a list of items to consider when developing the implementation timeline, such as, is there a priority issue? The protection and/or management methods, the costs associated, additional or potential funding sources, and more. And included in these implementation plans, we hope you'll make use of the different funding sources that we've stuck into the framework. And so that includes a list of a lot of unfortunately competitive funding sources to provide upgrades to treatment plants or to help with land acquisition or other source protection efforts. And there is an implementation strategy timeline illustrating 3 examples that's included in the framework. And that not only includes a table, but the step-by-step process to take for implementation. And again, we want to help your communities move past the assessment phase and into the protection phase and actually putting it into action. Next slide, please. And so the last step to having a complete protection plan is to designate a plan management team. And I think, that might be something that a coordinator position might be handy for. And I think, is that what the SS7 was talking about earlier about finding funding to, I see Dan nodding his head. Okay. Right, so next slide, please. So the management team would be responsible for ensuring that A, the protection plan is completed, and B, that the identified protection and management methods are implemented. And in addition to implementation, the plan management team should keep the stakeholder group and all parties involved up to date on the progression of the plan, by sharing the plan, its progress, and then, any subsequent updates. The framework does also include ways to regularly evaluate progress, as well as to look at the overall success of the plan, as well as to make recommendations for revising the plan in the future should conditions evolve. Next slide, please. Right, so that all of that is covered in the framework, and then there is a pretty substantial list of resources and information available in the supplemental toolkit, which is part of the 160-odd page document. And that's all I have for you today. So this is my contact information, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. That's my email, it's my office number. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. Anytime. If you have any questions or concerns or things that you want to talk about. And I'm happy to take any questions that you may have now.
I'd like to allow some time here for some people to ask questions. So if you want to raise your hand, I can identify. I see Paul has his hand up.
Yeah, Grant, good presentation. As you said, the Hudson 7 is kind of unique. We have a watershed of 13,000 square miles, and we have to monitor the activities in all that area. And I'm not sure how we can do that. So that's one question. And then, did you say who is the consultant for our area? I'd like to know that. And then are you going to take a look at climate change, particularly how the salt front is going to be coming up the Hudson River due to higher temperatures? And we can discuss this, maybe I'll give you a call because we have a pretty big agenda, but I just wanted to tell you some of the things that I'm thinking about.
Okay, so I'll try to run through your questions. Your first one was about what to do in the rather large watershed of the Hudson River. That I think will be a key discussion or a key point of discussion during the any and all subsequent meetings regarding source protection of the Hudson River. But there are ways to do it, and I think the fact that there is a Hudson 7 I'm talking to right now is extremely important and a major first step to that. Everybody's able to get together and communicate and talk about what issues are going on, what issues are of concern, and obviously the combined voices of 7 Hudson River communities is larger and more readily heard than say if only the town of Rhinebeck had an issue, right? Your second point regarding the consultant, so there were a number of communities, I think 50 odd communities, and the Hudson 7, I believe, was counted as one applicant that applied for the assistance through the DWSB2 program. And so the municipalities were divvied out kind of in a way. So, each municipality each technical assistance provider was assigned to a specific municipality, if that makes sense. Or maybe the other way around is that each applicant was assigned a specific technical assistance provider. I'm not actually sure if the 2 consulting firms that were hired, which again were Barton and Madridis and the Chazen companies, are working with any municipalities in our region. And then the third point regarding climate change is that yes, climate change resiliency is a part of the DWSB2 framework, and that is something that will obviously be of major concern moving forwards. That should be taken into account for future discussions.
Thanks.
So to clarify, Grant, you are the contractor for the Hudson 7.
Yes.
Correct. So
Yes,
we're not waiting for a decision. We've got
No. Yeah. So
the state essentially
the
direct.
Hudson 7 will be working with myself, as well as another individual we are in the process of hiring. Thank you, Dan.
So Grant, I guess we'll be hearing from you how we can formally kick this off with the individual with the water treatment plants that we have in our municipalities.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And
sorry.
You
I
be
think
in the Hudson 7, or you be working directly with each of the municipalities separately?
I think that depends on how the Hudson 7 wants to manage things, right? I think it would be good to speak with the water system operators. I have met Randy Elstad before, a few years ago during the kickoff of the Central Hudson Dredging Project. I'm not familiar with the operators for the other systems. I don't know what the capacities are. So that I think would be something good to start off with. But otherwise, I understand that the members in this discussion tonight all have fairly busy schedules, so we can work out who is available, who wants to be more involved. But also with regards to the previous talking point, I think having a coordinator position or some sort of coordination team would be very helpful to coordinate efforts, within the Hudson 7 area, as well as Ulster and Dutchess counties at large.
Okay.
So that could be a discussion that we have regarding who wants to participate, or who wants to have a more active role in participation.
Grant, I'll send you my presentation that I made on the Hudson 7 tomorrow or something. I think
Okay.
that'll help you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Grant. I think we're going to be in contact a lot as we
Yes.
kind of work on getting through. I think what is important is that a formal kickoff with each of in municipalities. And I envision this as let's all get together in a room at some point in time with the municipalities and the water plant operators and strategy, and hopefully maybe we'll have a coordinator or not by then, but plan a strategy.
Okay, and then actually, so on that note, would it be possible for you to send me, or for somebody to send me a list of the current contact informations of the Hudson 7 members, so I have an idea of who the supervisors and mayors are, so I have a better idea of who's involved.
Yeah.
We have that, and I'd be happy, Gary, with your go forward to do that includes the water operators and everyone else.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I know we have a list, so Rebecca, if you could just forward that to them.
Okay, great, thank you.
And Grant, what's your email address?
It is, let me put it in the chat. It might be easier that way.
Rebecca, could you include Europa and I in that, our contacts as well?
Yep, sure thing. I think it's there, but if not, I'll make sure it's
Okay,
included.
because we had talked about the county doing some type of value-added work on the project.
Okay, I'm going to call this an end. And Grant, thank you. I appreciate your time and your effort that you're putting into this, and we'll be in touch and looking forward to working with you.
Right, absolutely. Gary, can I just ask one question?
Sure.
So I was asked to ask you about the, I guess, status of the coordinator position, and if that was going to be something that the Hudson 7 is going to pursue moving forward. So by the sounds of the earlier discussion, it sounds like it is. So there is potentially funding available for a coordinator position then?
That's our hope in the near future, yes.
Okay, is there any sort
But
of,
we are not there yet.
okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Grant. Okay, I'm going to move on for actually the next thing on our action in terms of old business we discussed last month was the formation of an ad hoc committee to discuss the funding operations and options for a coordinator. I don't know if you all remember, but we have a project coordinator description that we had created. So there is a framework out there for one that may need to be reviewed, modified, and or updated. But it'd be great if we could I'm going to ask for volunteers to help work this project and turn it as quickly as possible. I see Bill. Thank you, Bill. I know Elizabeth Spinzia wants to be part of the process as well. She had contacted me and wanted to be. And I will gladly be participant in this. So having that, I'm going to say it's Bill, Dan.
Yeah, I think either me or Rebecca, we hadn't fully discussed, but given at least that one of the funding options that the county executive presented, the kind of first draft would have involved a contract to us as a start. It would probably have to be involved from the ground up.
Okay. So you guys decide. So it looks like we got a 4-person team.
Gary, I would suggest that, you could just include Europa and I as alternatives. It's Brad.
Yeah, I hear. Yeah, Brad.
Just because we know most about county positions, things like that.
Well, that's a great. Thank you, Brad. So why don't we just include you and Europa, and we'll go from there. I'd like to know if anybody wants to take the lead on this. I'm kind of looking at Bill, if he would take the lead to pull us together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you've done such a great job.
The plan is to have the coordinator's position drafted out by our next meeting. So be there or be square.
Yeah. Any other questions about that?
Yeah, just on the scope, it's to define the position and also the funding
Model.
right? Like those are the two aspects we're talking about?
Yes.
Wanted to be clear. Thanks.
Thank you for that clarification, Dan.
Should we have someone representing from Ulster County?
Well, we're gonna have Europa, who's our Ulster County rep.
Good.
But I mean, if any one of the members here want to participate from Ulster County, please. If you entrust us, then we're gonna move forward. Bill, we got a team, let's move, okay?
Okay,
All right.
Does there need to be a vote, Gary, or no?
Do we need a vote to form a committee? I don't know. All right, I don't think so, but if you want to make it official, then I'll make a motion and that we've identified a committee for our formation of a coordinator and a funding plan to come back with the result by the next meeting. I have a second. Randy, thank you. Voting members say aye. Raise your hand. Perfect, thank you. Done. Done. I'm happy. I'm really excited about this. This is a chance that we can really move forward. So Bill, John Liscombe, I thank you. Dan, I thank you for, pushing our county executive onto the edge of the boat and not letting them go.
And that's how we do it. We take them out in the middle of the river. They want, and we ask them how much food they brought with them.
Well, I'll tell you what, I like that strategy. It worked well.
Yeah. I
Good
mean,
job.
honestly, just one thing about it. I mean, all I did was bring up the fact that the Hudson 7 wanted to focus on this and had made it a goal, and it happened boom, boom, boom from there. He was very dedicated to seeing, and in his words, to support, not to take over, to support the effort, which I think was great. So it's all the work.
And I hate to tell you this, if you think you convinced Mark to do something he didn't want to do, and he didn't convince you to come along, you're a mistake.
yeah. Now, I was gonna say, it took a very short period of time, and I think he recognized it, and off we went to the races. So kudos to him. And let's get this done. Gary, I don't want to wait until the week before we're done. So
Rebecca, could you send us the copy of the coordinator position that we have, the definition? Could you email that out?
Well, yeah, but I'm not sure. Why don't you bring it into your, if I may suggest, bring it into the task, the ad hoc committee, because it sounds like the scope is different, slightly different.
But I'm just saying it's a framework to start from.
Yeah. So you want me to send it to the entire council, or you want it to go to the ad hoc committee?
I would send it to the committee so that we can start drafting it.
Yep. Very good.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. The next one was to form a committee for the drinking water source protection program. That Grant just was here and explained in detail. So I think it's important that we look at that, to have a source for them to go to, and then a source to connect to our water treatment plants and the chief water plant operators. I'm open to discussion, open for discussion here.
What's our time frame on this?
Good question. Grant, are you still here?
I am still here, yes.
So the question that's being asked, the question on the table is, what is your time frame for getting started in kickoff?
I'm ready to go whenever you guys are. So we've got resources in place. I have been doing quite a bit of reading and making sure I'm up to date on Hudson River issues in the lead up to this meeting. So I'm, if you want to send me an email tomorrow, I'm ready to start answering questions and helping out.
Well, I mean, we don't have a project coordinator, as you know,
Right.
Discussing, and to have a contact here for you to go to. I'm open to suggestions.
Okay,
I could be the contact.
so if Rebecca wants to, let me think about this. So what I'm thinking is that since the first step of the plan itself is to identify a group of stakeholders, that sounds like that would pair fairly well with the committee that you're trying to form right now. So I can send out resources about that. I'm not sure who to send them out to, since I know that y'all are fairly busy running your municipalities. So if you have an idea of who I could direct those resources to and preliminary discussions for identifying stakeholders and folks to bring in, that would be great. I can, work with Riverkeeper if anybody wants to take a lead on that front. Otherwise, at this time, the two contacts I have are you, Gary, as well as another trustee of Rhinebeck. I'm sorry, his name is escaping me. The person I was listed as second in command of the DWSB.
Yeah, we have a liaison, but he's not participating in any of the discussions, so.
Grant,
Okay.
why don't you just send the materials to the Hudson Sevens Gmail account and we can go from there.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea.
When I
All right.
send you the contact list, you'll receive it from the Hudson Sevens account, and that way everything is in one place and can be sent out to wherever it needs to go for now while they're in this transition. Okay?
Great, that sounds like the plan.
If I may offer, I'd like to ask maybe, Dan, if you and I can have a side discussion on this and try to strategize how we think we should be putting it together, if you don't mind. All right, so,
Okay.
all right. So let's try to get together and then we can kind of like brainstorm and bring something back.
Sure.
Okay. I don't know your availability, but let's try to, between the two of us, we'll figure out some time.
Yeah, we'll find time. I think, just to, in my memory, just to land before we leave this item, is that the draft we left with was that this committee that we'd form would be like a we're using coordinator all over the place.
Yeah.
Shepherd the process.
Right.
It wouldn't be the full stakeholder group. It would be the ones to make sure we're liaising with Grant and keeping, getting the process going and keeping it going and having a small group who is dedicated to that. I know I'm perfect. I'm willing and eager to do that as one member of that group.
Yeah, well, but Dan, I'll just quickly share my idea. My idea was somehow trying to bring, operators in from each one of the 5 plants.
Gotcha.
And have them name somebody, whether it's, I don't care who it is, but try to get them to name a person that we could then have the main core of this committee. And my opinion is it should be the water plant operators, but they need outside help as well, but they are the ones that are going to be the most valuable, I think, to participate in the process.
Okay, so let's connect as you suggested and map it out.
Okay.
And while I've got the mic just for a second, I just want to point out, we've been talking about trying to get a full-time coordinator, but I want to make sure everyone, that we all recognize that Rebecca's been doing an extraordinary job in that role on a much less than full-time basis, but an extraordinary contribution. So I just don't want to leave that discussion of coordination without saying that, and yes, seeing some rounds of applause.
Yes, I mean,
Absolutely.
so that's what the value, and I just want to say that's the value that the contribution that Riverkeeper has made to help make this successful, and the value and the technical resources you have as yourself and Rebecca have been invaluable. So thank you both. That doesn't mean we're leaving you. We're gonna just evolve. Okay.
Well,
All
I'm
right.
more than willing to help on any of the technical issues of this committee once you
Okay.
get going. I mean, I know all the plants. I've been to
Yeah,
talk to all the operators, work with all of them.
thank you, Paul. So you want, how about I'll include you and Dan in that initial, our strategy plan, okay?
Okay.
All right. I will set something up for the three of us.
Grant, I'll be in touch with you tomorrow so you can get moving.
Great, that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. We have several other old business action items. I don't know if there's anything to repeat. The Hudson River drinking water source issues and the Central Hudson cleanup process. Is there any update quickly there?
Hi, members. This is Eric Chastain from Central Hudson. I would like to present an update and thank you, Rebecca, for sharing the slides. While there is no remediation work planned for the end of this year in the river, a remediation alternatives analysis is still being refined. We would like to use this fall season for something effective. And we have an air bubble curtain pilot study being prepared. Now, in the interest of time, I'll go through this fairly rapidly. I know you have a full agenda, and if anybody has questions, I'd be happy to answer those offline with you individually. If you could go to the next slide, please. I'll just introduce air bubble curtain technology. Is we're place tubing at the on the bottom of the Hudson River around the Poughkeepsie water treatment intake, around all the intakes, and also in an area south of our site, south of the walkway, with the technology of just flowing compressed air down through the tubing. The air bubbles would come out of perforations within the tubing, and this technology has the potential to prevent fish from entering a work area or an intake, perhaps, and then knocking down turbidity and bringing up sheen if there is any within the work area. And it's noted that it's not a remediation method, but this could be a water protection measure to supplement our existing protection measures whenever we do land on that remediation method to be implemented. The next slide shows the study areas, which I mentioned briefly before, in that around the water treatment facility intake. Our pilot study right now is in draft, and we'll be submitting it to DEC in September. Our draft plan is to place 3 concentric circles around all the intakes, and then next part of the slide, the bottom half of this slide, shows the area south of our site. And we would operate these for really only a period of 12 days maximum is our goal. It's not a very long test, but we do hope it will meet our pilot study objectives, which are outlined on the next slide. Just really, do we have the ability to deploy this system? Divers would be used, and boats, and potentially barges. Also, can the technology be effective in influencing turbidity and non-aqueous phase liquids and sheen? And if it is, we will have monitors in the river and at the Poughkeepsie Water Treatment Plant wet well to monitor turbidity and collect such data. Our next slide shows the proposed schedule. It's ambitious, and subject to agency feedback and response. And we'd like to submit this work plan to DEC in September 21 and discuss permitting if necessary with them at the same time, and concurrently seek to procure contractors who could roll out this system in the October, November timeframe. And then we would produce a pilot study report following the pilot study in January and February. Of course, we would keep this group and the Poughkeepsie Water Board apprised of any developments and changes, and allow for the opportunity. If you did have any questions, we'd be happy to answer those. So that's just a brief update for you. And are there any quick questions right now?
Eric, Bill Carlos, I'm on that joint water board. We have a joint water board committee meeting coming up.
I believe it's September
Tuesday.
7th.
Randy, it's the first Tuesday, right? The 7th? Yeah, it's the 7th. Maybe you'd like to come to that meeting and discuss this with the joint water board?
I would like that very much, yes.
Okay, consider yourself invited. It's at the water plant. Mark knows, in case you have any questions, and feel free to call me if you need any help.
Oh, thank you much. Thank you very much. We'll coordinate and we'll be there.
Okay, I'm going to move ahead because we have some updates that I know that people are anxious to hear. Emily, do you have anything to update on chipping?
Yeah, just to give the whole group an update that we did write back. So we had gotten a letter from TDI trying to engage with us about trying to come up with some solutions on how we can protect our water supplies. We wrote back to them and asked them for a step-by-step description of how they're going to be preparing their environmental management and construction plan, and especially how the pilot testing is going to fit into that, so that we can understand that process and how we can work with them on that. And specifically, we asked them to set up a meeting with the contractor who would be doing the jet plowing. And that meeting is now, I believe, set for September 3rd at 3 p.m. And so I know that date worked for some of the committee members who wanted to join, but if anyone else wants to, just let me know and I'll send you I think it'll be a Zoom link, September 3rd at 3 p.m. And then the other piece is that as far as the RISE project, Gary was in touch with them and they want to present to the Hudson 7 later this year, I believe. So I think those are the updates.
Good. Thank you, Emily. Okay. John, you're with us today. Are you still here?
I am.
There you are. John, you wanted to give us an update.
Yeah.
About the Tier 4 transmission lines.
Yeah, just really quickly to follow on Emily. I'm sure you're aware, but I'm going to say it anyway. There's info and there's an opportunity. The state's probably going to pick about 2 of the 7 proposals that are now on the table. And Chippy, I'm not even sure on all of them on their route. And Emily, you may know better, but I know that Chippy, Catskill Renewable Connector, and Empire Connector are all projects that envision trenching with a jet plow past the Hudson 7. And RISE may be another, and I'm embarrassed not to know the answer to that. However, there are 2 projects. One is a Van Grid, the Excelsior Connect, I think it's called. And the other is Clean Path, which is another developer. Clean Path would enter at New Windsor and travel south, and Avangrid would travel down the thruway and even possibly have the cable hung on the Tappan Zee Bridge with no water impacts at all. So obviously you guys are primarily concerned with the tidal reach around the Hudson 7 intakes, but I'm sure you're also concerned for the impacts to the river in general from the cable installations. I believe there's an opportunity here for Hudson 7 to say to NYSERDA and potentially Governor Hochul, you've got 7 projects, 2 of them don't involve trenching in the vicinity of Hudson 7 at all. We would like you to commit to selecting projects that do not trench and resuspend in the vicinity of Hudson 7. It's different from the day when it was just sort of chippy on the table, because then we were saying no to a Cuomo priority project. Now, big change. Cuomo bye-bye, and 7 projects on the table with alternatives that don't have nearly the negative impacts that Chippy does. It's the Darth Vader of the 7. Because it has the indigenous impacts, because it's hydro, because we're sending our energy dollars to the province of Quebec, etc. There are alternatives that we can support, and that's a more positive message than opposition, simply opposition. The other thing I wanted to say, and I'm happy to work with whoever on this, I'm eager to work with whoever on this. I do believe that Hudson 7 would get an audience from the governor's office if Hudson 7 requested it. Other 2 little quick things. Riverkeeper and the patrol boat program are eager to support you guys any way we can. So we took out Dutchess County the other day. Over the next, in the future, we'd be delighted to take out anybody that you all think would be helpful to your cause and your communities, whether it's county or local or press or you name it. We need lots of lead time to make it happen, but we're eager to support with the boat program. And finally, Rebecca shared with you all the pictures of the rail bridge that's across the river from Poughkeepsie that has been jury-rigged. We showed that to Mark, and he wrote a letter to the state. He has had a response from the state. The thing that I think is missing here, and CSX is notorious for blowing off the public. It's like written into their business charter that do not give the public an inch, because if you give them an inch, they'll want a mile. I'm not happy with that relationship. And I would like to push them on this bridge as hard as we possibly can. So my initial letter was to DEC, emergency response for the state of New York. And I asked specifically for 2 things. One was an independent bridge engineering assessment of this jury-rigged bridge. In this image, you can see how the steel beams at the right are sagging compared to the steel beams on the left. And the shoring is to support those sagging steel beams. This is the bridge. I think it's 1.2 miles from the Poughkeepsie intake. And I don't know exactly where the Lloyd intake is, but similar distance. And an accident here would be catastrophic. So right now they've written, the Department of Transportation has written back to Molinaro saying that CSX is going to monitor the bridge, that the bridge is under federal jurisdiction, and that they plan on replacing it in 2022. So 2 years after they jury-rigged. I would like very much to push this harder. And I think that if Hudson 7 were to contact both Molinaro and the other persons on my initial report and say, great, thank you for the response, missing one critical part. We need an independent engineering assessment of this bridge to know whether it is safe to carry the loads which it now carries. We want that independent assessment. The same as when you have your car inspected, you don't get to inspect it yourself. You have to have a state certified inspector inspect your car. I would say that that ought to apply here. So again, I'd be happy to work with whoever is available to put together a very simple letter that would copy Molinaro, but it would be to the state officials that have the authority, hopefully, to order an inspection. And the final thing is I would love to work with you, Paul Malrose. If you and we can talk offline, I would love to find a retired rail bridge engineer. And I will take you and that person to that bridge. But it has to be someone who's willing to go on the record. And then we would have another hand grenade to throw into this conversation. And that's it from me.
Thank you, John. I just like to maybe brain thought here is Brad, if he could help us from the county side, get the letter from Molinaro and then somehow work to pull a response and have Molinaro respond with the issues that you brought up. Brad, is that something you could help us coordinate?
I'll talk to Owen tomorrow. Owen is aware of it, and Owen actually knows a lot more. But he found the bridge actually because it wasn't on the regular state bridge system. But I'm away till Labor Day, so let me try and. You want to talk to someone before then, so right. I'll get a hold of Owen and see what he knows.
I mean, if we can get maybe Molinaro to respond, with John's concerns as well, would be great, I think.
John,
well, the idea that, when you're out there and you see it every day, I mean, that bridge carries tanker trucks every day. I mean, the tankers on the train.
Yeah, it carries. We've done a lot of work with Coast Guard and EPA on spill response, and we're all very sensitized to the unit trains, the ones that are 110, 30,000 gallon tank cars, which for a while were full of Bakken from Dakota, but they're also full of all other kinds of chemicals. And those unit trains are all one product. The emergency response people actually are more afraid of the mixed cargo trains because you'll have a train, it'll have Bakken, it'll have chlorine, it'll have some other God knows what thing. And the emergency response people are just terrified that a mixed product train will go in the water. And then the responders don't even know what they're going after.
All right. So John, I'm going to have to cut this short. I'm very important, but I think we can see, we need to push and let's keep pushing. You brought up the emergency response team. Randy, I know you've been involved with the coordination of the planning for that drill. I don't know if you want to give an update, but I will say that I know that the drill was postponed to the recent tropical storm Henri, but I haven't seen any rescheduling. Have you?
No, I haven't heard.
To remind everyone of whatever confidentiality agreements we're under to talk about it.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. Thank you.
There's no rescheduling yet. No,
okay.
Nothing yet.
Okay. All right. It is now 6:45. Unless there's other urgent business, I'm going to make a motion to end our Hudson 7 meeting.
There is 2 items, Gary.
Okay. Rebecca?
The first is the appointment of Neil Butler to replace Don Kiernan from the town of Esopus. We can at least, take a vote for that transition, and then we can work with the town to get a resolution. And the second thing is future meetings, if we're going to continue on Zoom with the Delta variant or not before we close. So those 2 items, Gary.
All right. So let's back up to action, the first one. And could you repeat that for me, please?
The appointment of Neil Butler.
Oh, that's right.
The incoming water plant operator to replace Don Kiernan in the town of Esopus, as well as sending Don a card and probably Paul.
I thought we'd approved sending the card last meeting.
You don't have to vote on that. I'm just adding that in. So
but I'd like to make a motion to include John Butler, is it? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's Neil
Neil
Butler.
Butler, yes. All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Bill, thank you. All voting members say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Right.
I approve. All right, very good. So let's get an invite out to him and make sure he can on regular attendance.
Thanks, Gary. And hi, Shannon.
And then, yes, and then the second item is going forward.
Future meetings.
Yes, I believe for the interim, given where we are, my suggestion is that we still continue in Zoom for the next foreseeable months until we have a better, clearer picture on where code is going. So I'd like to make a motion that we continue using Zoom as our regular scheduled meetings until further notice.
Second.
Second.
Neil, thank you, Neil. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good.
And Gary, one
Okay.
last thing, show of the items that were not discussed, are we tabling and they'll
Yes.
be on our next month's agenda?
Yep.
Okay,
These
thanks.
are such great meetings, but yeah, I hate, and I'm sorry that we have to rush through some things, but we maybe, I don't know, we can discuss our agendas. I've had to go to multiple board meetings because there's so much going on. But again, we'll bring that up for discussion. Anyways, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Randy, thank you. Show of hands, you say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Enjoy the heat and let's go for a dip in the river.
Good night.